on this video today have given me ideas about what we need to be taking to the field. And so Katie was willing to take some pictures of a tote that she put together that has various items in it. Katie, do you want to walk us through this tote?
Yes, and I can say I got this idea from Vicki Shadrick over in Webster County. So she can definitely help out with this as well. So I find it's easiest just to have a tote and have everything in it. So then once you get that first phone call, you can just load it up in your vehicle and it can stay in there until you're done with harvest season, is what I do. But I make sure that it has a measuring wheel in it, sample cups, as well as baby cups, just depending on if you have to pull from the combine or if they're dumping it under from the truck, you can pull it with just the coffee container as well, or if you're doing multiples, I have ice cream containers so that I can keep samples separated as well. And then I have my moisture tester, just so it's easier instead of running it up to the elevator, a clipboard, a yardstick, and then flags, and then Ziploc baggies if needed as well for
Okay.
that area.
And that's a lot in that document. I think what I got another picture from you, Katie, where you're showing me some other files or pens or some things like that to keep track of the paperwork. Is that correct?
Yes, so I have like a little folder holder that I have pins in, and then I keep a file. So I print off a lot of like the week contest rules and stuff like that. So then I'll have that and I can fill that out whenever I'm working on numbers and stuff. And writing down what producer and stuff. So then at the very end, once we're done with wheat harvest, I can contact them so that they know which field was which and stuff like that. And then also giving them the paperwork as well. But a lot of times I have to meet them again to hand them the paperwork to refill out. And then I also felt it was easier for me to get like the little small little pocket notebooks. So then I can just put that in my back pocket. So whenever I'm measuring and stuff, I can just write down what the numbers are and then do the math that way instead of having that piece of paper and clipboard and trying to hold all of that and measure. And then I also keep on my cheat sheet of what the numbers need to be, so I can do that quickly. And then that moisture test weight, I have those just so if I do run them up to the elevator person can fill that out for me, or if I do it with my own moisture tester, I'll have that as well with it.
Yeah, and as we're looking over this, I can see the you've got last year's wheat at 3 acres on the yellow notebook. We'll have to make an adjustment for this year's
Yes.
wheat in some of those calculations. But that's a really good it's a really good set of things to take to the field with you. To some of this, the others have similar type things you put together, and are there other things that you take that
I would
Katie didn't
add to
mention?
that to have a Sharpie marker in there, and Katie, I'm certain has one in there, but because you mentioned the bags, the plastic bags, and when we're doing those samples, you may be going from one field to the other. You may not be going back to the office or being able to take those back before you go to the next field, and just making sure that you have a Sharpie marker with you all the time. So if you need to, you can put the name on that plastic bag where you're getting that sample, to be able to keep that separate, and maybe the farm name, like Katie had mentioned. Sometimes you'll go to a couple of different farms, and being able to keep those separate. And so you always want to make sure before harvest season that you check and that you have a couple of Sharpies in there. Or I feel like that's something that's on my checklist. And I keep a folder that's kind of like this. It's one of those umbrella type folders, and where you open it up and you can have different files and tabs. And I keep in there I keep a tab for all the blank forms. So I have several blank forms for whatever harvest you're doing. If we're in wheat, like we're talking about wheat right now, have several of those in there, because then you've always got one when you get to the field, instead of just taking one or two and get out there and realize you don't have one. I also keep a tab for completed forms. So once you're out there in the field again, if you're going to be going to another field before you come back, you can take that completed form and go ahead and drop that into that folder section there, so that it doesn't get lost in the truck or lost somewhere else, that it's in there. And then I have one for the moisture readings that Katie had showed as well. And then if you do have a moisture tester like this Shore that she has, I also have one as well. I keep the information in there on calibration and things like that. In case something were to happen out in the field and it's not acting exactly right, then you have that information with you and you don't have to try to run back to the office to get that information.
Yeah, those are good comments, Vicky. While I'm thinking about it with these portable moisture testers, we typically are asking for 3 readings in the field and then the average of it on these portables. And I think I saw that on Katie's worksheets here, where she can get 3 and then grab the average from those 3. If a sample is going into a certified um, elevator or a certified grain moisture, one of the table moisture sensors, we'll accept 1 from those, as long as we know that they've been calibrated and they're up to USDA specs. Clint, do you have some other things that you take with you out to the field?
My setup looks identical to what Katie has, all the way down to the files, and trying to keep that organized. I mean, the only thing, most people, they've gotten used to calculators on their phones, but I still just like a handheld calculator. They're pretty tough. Those phones are, I tear electronic stuff up pretty easy. These are cheap, less expensive than a phone. So that's the only thing I have in my
Yeah.
set, in addition to what she has, is just a kind of old rugged calculator.
Well, and that you mentioned a rugged calculator. It's actually easier to see in the sunlight than a phone is anyhow. At least my phones, the ones I deal with. So it's a good thought as well. Other comments from anybody else on here?
Or say one thing I try to do is I always try to have extra of my calculation sheets. That way I can fill those out in pencil, and then later on I can make up one that's good in hard copy and usually put it in pen. One question on y'all's portable moisture meters: are y'all calibrating those with the elevator during the season? Because I always take,
Yes.
I'm lucky. I've got an elevator that's just right down the road, and I'm pretty much in the center of the county. Usually I'm either going one direction or the other. So I just usually go and use one of those, or I've got some farmers that have the tabletops that are calibrated, and I use those.
Okay.
In Webster County, we're not close to an elevator, and so it makes it much smoother and quicker to be able to use the moisture tester. But that's a good point, Ben. I'm glad you brought that up. I always go and try to, or I don't try, I do get that calibrated every year ahead of harvest season.
Really, really good comment. Really good comment. Those moisture testers do need to be calibrated. The portable ones need to be calibrated every year, sometimes multiple times in a season. So it's a good comment.
Probably, I know whenever I was doing the trials, the yield trials with UT, always having another set, at least 1 or 2 more sets of batteries, because at times those things would eat batteries.
That is a
It's a
good
good,
point too.
it's a really good point, especially when it's either super hot or super cold out. And wheat tends to be a little hotter during harvest. So good comments. Really good comments on those.
The other comment that I did think about is if you do use a clipboard, I have found that it's nice to put one of the bigger rubber bands around the bottom of that clipboard, so that if it's windy out, your papers aren't flying up. So I keep a rubber band here, and then I have that little cheat sheet like you had, that This one's actually for one that was in the corn contest, but you can keep that stuff on your clipboard too, so that you have that. But the rubber band, it's not a have-to thing, but it is kind of handy, especially on windy days when you're trying to write, keep all that together.
Talking about cheat sheets, that's the entire backside of my clipboard is nothing but cheat sheets for corn, wheat, and soybeans.
And Vicky, in addition to the rubber band, you could also use, at times I've had to use a binder clip
Yes.
on there if I couldn't find a rubber band, something that will, to your point, something that hold those papers flat so they don't get carried away in the wind.
She's got those flags in her box. I was going to show you all. A lot of times, if it's not a perfect square, you know, you'll end up with a triangle. So on my measuring wheel, I just got a piece of about 4 foot of 1/2 inch sprayer hose zip tied to it, and I'll keep 5 or 6 flags in there while I walk. If I need one, just pop it out and stick it in the ground.
So you got a flag caddy on your
Yeah,
measuring wheel.
yeah.
That makes good sense as well. So, and it's not uncommon in these to be a foot or two short on one side versus the other. And so,
Or 100 feet short.
or 100 feet short in some cases.
Katie mentioned the coffee can, and Clint did too. Those are really handy just because they're a good size, they're easy to handle, and they're lightweight. And I would make sure that you had some of those in your supplies, however you keep them together to go to the field.
Good comment, Vicky, on the basic coffee can, which we got a picture of up on the screen at the moment. And some of those coffee cans are large enough that they'll actually hold 5 pounds of grain in them. So if now in our contest, we're asking for 5 pounds of wheat grain for the quality analysis, that's roughly what one of the larger coffee cans is going to hold.